Jehovah's Witnesses try to obey the government and the laws of the land in every aspect of life. But the one aspect of life that they realize that the governments cannot control is our worship of God. If the government says you cannot preach the message, it doesn't take much research in the Bible to see that the apostles had the same command given to them, and they gave very clear answers when they say we obey God as ruler rather than men.
Jesus had forewarned his disciples, "Men will deliver you up to local courts." While preaching from house to house, Newton Cantwell and his sons were arrested for conducting their ministry without the approval of the state. The witnesses challenged the conviction.
Not defiant, but simply peacefully saying, no, Jehovah has commanded us to do this, and we're not going to ask a human for permission to do that which Jehovah has commanded us to do.
After a 2-year battle, the court decided in favor of Jehovah's Witnesses. But just 2 weeks after the Cantwell decision, the United States Supreme Court would decide another case involving Jehovah's Witnesses and the national flag.
Although we respect totally the nation and what the flag represents, to make an act of devotion or worship to a flag is in the same category to us as worshiping an idol.
Thousands of witness school children were expelled because they would not salute. Among them, William and Lillian Gobitis. The witnesses challenged the expulsion in court.
Then when the time came for the trial, that was very frightening.
Raise your right hand, put your left hand on the Bible. You solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Bill was the first one to go on stand. They asked him, why don't you salute the flag? And he brought out Exodus 20.
Thou shalt not.
Then when it was my turn, they asked the same, and I said,
the Bible is clear at 1 John 5:21, where it says, little children, keep yourselves from idols.
Although the lower courts decided in favor of Jehovah's Witnesses,
Court's adjourned.
the school board fought back and appealed to the Supreme Court. On June 3, 1940, the Supreme Court ruled 8-1 against Jehovah's Witnesses, a ruling that would rock the country. Within days of the Gobitis decision, the Kingdom Hall in Kennebunk, Maine was torched. In Illinois, a mob attacked witnesses as they were preaching, turning over their cars and destroying their literature. In Winsboro, Texas, witness Oscar Pillars was attacked by a mob that was determined to make him salute the flag.
They brought me to him. By now, they had the flag there, and they wanted me to salute that. They would hold up my hand in this fashion, and I'd let my hand drop. And of course, that made them very angry.
The mob threw the rope over a pipe and then pulled Pillars up. He woke up in jail and near death.
The next thing I knew was a doctor was bringing me to. The marshal said, and this put great courage back into me, the marshal said, "He is the most stubborn devil I've ever seen in my life." So I knew then that I had not compromised.
Some were tarred and feathered, others were run out of town, several were castrated, and this was not just from 1 or 2 communities, but literally from Maine to California, from Washington to Georgia.
In Opelika, Alabama, witness Thelma Jones and later her husband Roscoe were arrested and unjustly convicted of selling books without a license. The U.S. Supreme Court upheld their conviction 5-4.
The Supreme Court ruled that the state, in this case the city of Opelika, had the right to impose a fee and a permit for the so-called privilege of talking to one's neighbor.
Yet, in the defeat, there lay a glimmer of hope. Dissenting Justices Douglas, Murphy, and Black stated that the Jones case and the earlier Gobitis flag salute case were wrongly decided. Jehovah's Witnesses saw their opportunity. They forged ahead with a new flag salute case.
Well, Brother Covington, it looks like we're ready to go to trial.
West Virginia State Board of Education versus Barnett. In the Barnett case, the court reversed itself, overturning the decision in Gobitis. The court ruled that the school board has no right to deny education to children of Jehovah's Witnesses who refuse to salute the flag. In that one year, 1943, the United States Supreme Court rendered 21 decisions favorable to Jehovah's Witnesses. Meanwhile, witnesses in the province of Quebec, Canada, were being arrested regularly, sometimes twice a day. Quebec's head of state, Premier Maurice Duplessis, made it his personal ambition to silence Jehovah's Witnesses. But his efforts backfired. After a 12-year battle, the Canadian Supreme Court convicted Duplessis for his harassment of Jehovah's Witnesses. The condemnation of the premier of a province was unprecedented in Canadian history, and it was hailed as a landmark for individual freedom. Legal battles were not limited to North America. In Greece, some 20,000 arrests were carried out against Jehovah's Witnesses. Over a period of 48 years, Minos Kokkinakis was arrested more than 60 times for preaching. He spent years in prison and in exile.
If I was keeping a book, how could I write it? 1, 2, 3, 5, 10. Many times I was in prison and exile. That was a whole life. 50 years. They sentenced us deliberately and premeditated.
Finally, in 1993, the European Court of Human Rights upheld the right of a Greek citizen to teach his religious beliefs to others, and ruled that Greece had violated the freedom of Minos Kokkinakis. To date, Jehovah's Witnesses have won over 200 favorable decisions in the highest courts on earth.
Burning deep within the hearts of Jehovah's Witnesses is the desire to show Jehovah how much we love him. As secular authorities attempt to impede our effort, then with that same degree of zeal, we work to protect our witnessing activities.
To know that if you put your trust in Jehovah, he will help you through it, no matter what.
The wonderful thing about persecution, if I can call it that, is that it demands a firm decision.
Jehovah is a powerful fighter. Who can fight with him?
No matter how much opposition we may face, or what form or shape it may take, our trust in Jehovah will never let us down. He's backing us up.
Throughout the legal battles and persecution, Jehovah's Witnesses were experiencing amazing growth. The School of Gilead was making an impact. In the first 10 years of its operation, over 2,000 missionaries had been trained and dispatched. And the number of Jehovah's Witnesses quadrupled. In Africa, in just 11 years after the start of the Gilead School, the number of Jehovah's Witnesses increased by 800%. The message took hold in the Orient as well. When Gilead missionaries arrived in Japan in 1949, there were fewer than 10 native witnesses. But in less than 50 years, that number would multiply to over 200,000.
Most definitely, it's not the result of human efforts, but it's the result of Jehovah's Spirit. It's true, He uses humans. He blesses their efforts, but it's God who makes it grow.
Worldwide, Jehovah's Witnesses were preaching in 143 countries. The work was expanding on every continent. The witnesses were growing, not just in number, but in understanding. Since the days of C.T. Russell, Jehovah's Witnesses had been using Bible translations accepted in the various lands in which they preached.
The kingdom of heaven is like to a grain of
But there were a number of problems. Antiquated language, the presence of spurious texts, and the fact that most translators had replaced the name of God, Jehovah, with titles such as Lord or God.
It's just as if you're reading a letter about a personal friend, someone you love, and their name's not in there. It just talks about the man or the person.
And so the need was seen to have a translation where the name Jehovah is mentioned everywhere where it used to be in the original writing.
In 1946, Jehovah's Witnesses began work on a new translation of the Bible. The Egyptian papyri, the Dead Sea Scrolls, and other recent archaeological findings helped make possible the full restoration of God's name. The results of years of painstaking labor began to be revealed in 1950.
By Jehovah's undeserved kindness, I have the extreme pleasure of releasing to the International Theocracy's Increase Assembly of Jehovah's Witnesses the New World Translation of the Christian Greek Scriptures. The New World Translation is the first to render the divine name consistently from Matthew to Revelation 237 times.
Restoring God's name to places where it had been removed didn't always set well with the critics.
But you can't do that, said one of the critics. The committee, in its foreword of 29 pages, shows how it can be done on valid grounds, and it doesn't.
This was a group of Spirit-begotten men under the influence, and not inspired, but under the influence of Holy Spirit, love, respect, and reverence for the author. And they gave us this translation. See? So when you study this, you feed on the mind of God.
After World War II, nations were beginning to recover economically, but not spiritually or morally. Jehovah's Witnesses took steps to make sure their conduct was in harmony with the standards set forth in the Bible. Since 1945, Jehovah's Witnesses have upheld the Bible's command to abstain from blood. In the 1950s, though many were adopting a more tolerant view of sex outside of marriage, Jehovah's Witnesses held that such conduct should be shunned.
And it was pointed out about that time that one could not be qualified to have a responsibility in the congregation if they hadn't a clean standing before God. Well, I remember some brothers were saying, oh, that'll never work, and we'll never have enough congregation overseers to do the job. But Brother Noah and the other responsible brothers determined that we were going to maintain Bible standards